Chapter 14 of the Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Bob Sage. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. Chapter 14. By and by, when we got up, we turned over the truck the gang had stole off of the wreck, and found boots and blankets and clothes and all sorts of other things, and a lot of books and a spyglass and 3 boxes of cigars. We had never been this rich before in neither of our lives. The cigars was prime. We laid off all the afternoon in the woods talking, and me reading the books and having a general good time. I told Jim all about what happened inside the wreck and at the ferry boat, and I said these kinds of things as adventures, but he said he didn't want no more adventures. He said that when I went in the Texas and he crawled back to get on the raft and found her gone, he nearly died, 'cause he judged it was all up with him anyway. It could be fixed. For if he didn't get saved, he'd get drowned, and if he did get saved, whoever saved him would send him back home so as to get the reward, and then Miss Watson would sell him south, sure. Well, he was right. He was most always right. He had an uncommon level head for a negro. I read considerable to Jim about kings and dukes and earls and such, and how gaudy they dressed, and how much style they put on, and called each other your majesty and your grace and your lordship, and so on, instead of mister. And Jim's eyes bugged out, and he was interested. He says, "I didn't know dey was so many on 'em. I hain't heard 'bout none of 'em scarcely but old King Solomon, unless you counts dem kings that's in a pack of cyards. How much do a king get?" "Get?" I says. "Why, they get $1,000 a month if they want it. They can have just as much as they want. Everything belongs to them. Ain't dat gay? And what dey got to do, Huck? They don't do nothing. Why, how you talk! They just set around." "No. Is that so?" "Course it is. They just set around, except maybe when there's a war. Then they go to the war. But other times they just lazy around, or go hawking, just hawking and Shh! Do you hear a noise?" We skipped out and looked, but it warn't nothing but the flutter of a steamboat's wheel away down, coming round the point. So we come back. "Yes," says I, "and other times when things is dull they fuss with their parliament, and if everybody don't go just so he whacks their heads off. But mostly they hang round the harem." "Round de which?" "Harem." "What's de harem?" "The place where he keeps his wives. Don't you know about a harem? Solomon had one. He had about 1,000,000 wives." "Why, yes, that's so. I done forget it. A harem's a boarding house, I reckon. Most likely dey has rackety times in de nursery, and I reckon de wives quarrels considerable, and dat crease de racket. Yet dey say Solomon de wisest man dat ever lived. I don't take no stock in dat, because why would a man want to live in the midst of such a blim-blamming all de time? No, 'deed he wouldn't. A wise man'd take and build a biler factory, and den he could shut down de biler factory when he want to rest." "Well, but he was the wisest man anyway, 'cause the widow she told me so her own self." "I don't care what de widow say. He warn't no wise man nuther. He had some of de dad fetchedest ways I ever seen. Does you know 'bout dat child dat he was gwine to chop in two?" "Yes, the widow told me all about that." "Well, den, Wa'n't dat de beatin'est notion in de world? You just take and look at it a minute. Dat's de stump dar. Dat's one of de women. Here's you. Dat's de yother one. I's Solomon, and dish yere dollar bill's de chile. Before'n you claims it, what does I do? Does I shin around 'mongst de neighbors and find out which un you de bill do belong to, and hand it over to de right one, all safe and sound, de way anybody dat had any gumption would? No, I take and whack de bill in two, and give half on it to you and de yother half to the yother woman. Dat's de way Solomon was gwine to do wid de chile. Now I want to ast you, what's de use of dat half a bill? Can't buy nothin' with it. And what use is a half a chile? I wouldn't give a darn for 1,000,000 of 'em. But hang it, Jim, you've clean missed the point. Blame it, you missed it 1,000 mile. Who? Me? Go 'long. Don't talk to me 'bout your pints. I reckon I know sense, and I see it. And dey ain't no sense in sich doin's as dat. De 'spute warn't about a half a chile. De 'spute was 'bout a whole chile. And de man dat think he can settle a 'spute 'bout a whole chile wid a half a chile don't know enough to come in out of rain. Don't talk to me about Solomon, Huck. I knows him by de back. But I tell you don't get the point. Blame the point. I reckon I knows what I knows. And mind you, de real point is furder. It's down deeper. It lays in de way Solomon was raised. You take a man dat got only 1 or 2 chillen. Is dat man gwine to be wasteful of chillen? No, he ain't. He can't afford it. He knows how to value 'em. But you take a man dat's got 'bout 5,000,000 chillen running round de house, and it's different. He as soon chop a child in two as a cat. Dey's plenty more. A child or two, more or less, warn't no consequence to Solomon, dad fetch him. I never see such a negro. If he got a notion in his head once, there weren't no getting it out again. He was the most down on Solomon of any negro I ever seen. So I went to talking about other kings and let Solomon slide. I told about Louis XVI that got his head cut off in France long time ago, and about his little boy, the Dolphin. That would be a king, but they took and shut him up in jail, and some say he died there. Poor little chap. But some says he got out and got away and come to America. That's good, but he'll be pooty lonesome. There ain't no kings here, is they, Huck? No. Then he can't get no situation. What he gwine do? Well, I don't know. Some of them gets on the police, and some of them learns people how to talk French. Why, Huck, don't the French people talk the same way we does? No, Jim, you couldn't understand a word they said. Not a single word. Well, now I be ding busted. How did dat come? I don't know, but it's so. I got some of their jabber out of a book. S'pose a man was to come to you and say, "Parlez-vous Français?" What would you think? I wouldn't think nothing. I'd take and bust him over the head. Dat is, if he weren't white. I wouldn't allow no negro to call me dat. Shucks, it ain't calling you anything. It's only saying, do you know how to talk French? Well, then, why couldn't he say it? Why, he is a saying it. That's a Frenchman's way of saying it. Well, it's a blame ridiculous way, and I don't want to hear no more about it. There ain't no sense in it. Looky here, Jim. Does a cat talk like we do? No, a cat don't. Well, does a cow? No, cow don't nuther. Does a cat talk like a cow, or a cow talk like a cat? No, they don't. It's natural and right for 'em to talk different from each other, ain't it? Course. And ain't it natural and right for a cat and a cow to talk different from us? Why, most surely it is. Well, then, why ain't it natural and right for a Frenchman to talk different from us? You answer me that. Is a cat a man, Huck? No. Well, den dey ain't no sense in a cat talking like a man. Is a cow a man? Is a cow a cat? No, she ain't either of them. Well, den, she ain't got no business to talk like either one or the other of them. Is a Frenchman a man? Yes. Well, den, dad blame it, why don't he talk like a man? You answer me that." I see it warn't no use wasting words. You can't learn a negro to argue, so I quit. End of chapter 14. Recording by Bob Sage.